I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools, you can feel your best yet, because I'm learning this life phase can be a truly exciting and often pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's time to start taking care of the most important person, and yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing? I hope you've had a good week. I have had a busy old week, actually. We had A-level results last week, so my eldest got his A-level results and I was so chuffed for him that he got exactly what he wanted, and his standards are high. I don't know where he gets it from in this family in terms of his brain power, but he wanted 3 A stars, which is the highest he could get, and he blimmin' got them. I was so proud of him because, I always say to all the children, I don't really care what you get. It's just, as long as you try hard and you do best by you. And I knew he wanted these 3 A stars so badly, and he did actually, probably for the first time ever in his life. He actually worked really hard. His GCSEs, he kind of worked, but he didn't really push himself. But with these, he worked hard and he got them. So I was so proud of him. And then Alfie, middle one, he did part of his BTEC in sport, and I was super proud of him as well, because this exam he did not find easy at all, and he got also what he wanted and needed. So really, really chuffed for both of them. They obviously did a lot of celebrations. My house seemed to be full of boys, teenage boys, at the end of last week, lying around on sofas after nights out and stuff. And then at the weekend, we had Alfie's birthday, my middle one's birthday, which is great. Then we went to visit friends, which was lovely. And then it was my mum's birthday on Sunday, so I did a little surprise visit. I didn't tell either of my parents that I was going to visit, so that was really nice. I'm glad I did that because it's been a while. So actually I ended up doing an awful lot of travelling and got back quite late last night. And it's quite nice to be back at home after doing a lot of moving around and recording this podcast. And you know what? I've never actually left it quite so much to the last minute to record an episode, but that's just how I'm rolling at the moment. And what I've decided I would like to talk about today is about relationships and relationships during perimenopause and menopause, because I know for my own self how my relationships with the people I love the most were affected. And I also know from so many of you who I talk to how your relationships are also equally affected at this stage of life, because there are so many changes happening, both in mind and body, that it can make us act in ways which sometimes we don't feel that in control of. I did actually ask and invite my husband to come on and be a guest on this episode. And I've asked him before and he said no. And I asked him again and he did and this time, because he was a bit like, what can I do to help you at the moment? I know you've got a lot on. I was like, well, you can come and be a guest on my podcast. And he's like, well, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, you have quite a lot to say about how difficult I was. Well, how difficult it was, shall I reframe, at that time when I was really, really struggling with hormonal changes, etc., and how you used to stand outside the front door and take a deep breath because you had to prepare yourself, I suppose, to come in to the house and see what you might expect. Anyway, he has declined again. I will get him on this podcast one day, because he was a bit like, well, that's all I've really got to say. And he would have more to say. But anyway, he's a very private person. He doesn't want to come on the podcast. So that's fine. So you've just got me. But I think what I wanted to start by saying is that when I reflect on how my own relationship was affected. And it's not just with my husband. It was also the relationship I had with my children, the relationships I have with my friends. I can so see now how I just wasn't myself. I wasn't in my usual state of mind. I wasn't thinking straight, and it does affect those around us. And I know also from people I talk to and from friends that some of these relationships don't ever get repaired. If you are not being yourself and not feeling yourself because of these shifts and changes which are happening at midlife, and because you're just not coping, it can really take a toll. And I think that is just so horribly tragic if these relationships are kind of ruined and there's no point of repair. So I think it's good to talk about this, because if this is you and you are struggling at with your relationships, and I tell you a little bit about my own kind of personal story, if it helps at all, then that is a good thing. So where to start? Well, in my very first episode of this podcast, I do share a bit about how my relationships were affected when I was really very much in the depths of my perimenopause. It affected my relationship with my children in that I had very little patience. I was quite shouty. I didn't really enjoy spending the time I had with them. I always felt like I had something else to do, something else to move on to. It was always on to the next, on to the next. I didn't have that real feeling of presence, of just enjoying them. And that I really do regret, because you can't get that time back. I felt my relationship with Giles was really, really strained, because again, I felt like I was doing everything. I was working from home. I was setting up my own tuition business at the time. I was doing that. We also had building works going on at home. I also felt like I was doing all the boring household chores, the washing, the cooking, the food shopping, doing everything to do, all the school admin, everything to do with the kids. And I almost resented him, because he could walk out the door and he could go to work and he could walk back in the door. Kids were all washed in their pajamas or in bed, having been fed, his dinner was made. And I felt quite bitter and resentful towards him. And that's not a great place to be meeting your husband with at the end of the day. I just felt he didn't understand. And when I did try and talk to him, I found it really difficult, because I was really, really snappy and not particularly nice. So he really was, it wasn't a great place to even start a conversation. And also my relationship with my friends suffered, because I was in a place at that time where I didn't want to reach out to them in the way that I wanted to burden them with how I was feeling. No one wants kind of like a moany Minnie all the time. I just felt very, very lonely. So just to give you a little bit of background about me and Giles. So Giles and I met at university. We've been together 27 years, which is crazy. But actually, we kind of got together a little bit before that, because we got together in our first year of uni, but then nothing really ever happened. So it was really our final year of university that we got together. We've been married 22 years this year, which is completely bonkers. And I'd say we do have a pretty special relationship. We're actually incredibly similar. We know how to have fun together. We make a really good team. And without question, he's my best mate, and, I love him deeply. However, our relationship did become strained more than it ever has done during those perimenopause years. And neither of us really, we didn't understand why that was. We do now. I totally understand it now. A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you. The main reasons why that relationship was so strained was because my nervous system at that point was on such high alert because I was in a constant state of stress. I was firefighting. I was trying to be super mum and do everything for everybody else because I felt that I had no other choice. He was working away. He worked in London every single day at that point. He was up and out really early. He didn't get back till quite late. So I was at home and, if you're a single mum, it's bloody hard. And I did feel like a single mum a lot of the time. I was just doing the things. I was just going through the motions, trying to set up a business. And before that, I was a teacher and I was doing all the things then. And it just felt relentless. And I wasn't doing anything for myself, really, to switch that nervous system from the sympathetic state to the parasympathetic state. My nervous system was totally rigid. It wasn't flexible. What we need to try and aim for is a flexible nervous system where we can, we need to feel stress. There's certain points in the day and times in our lives where we need that stress, but what we need is to be able to then return to being more relaxed, to a relaxed state. That's when our body's allowed to do its functions, like you fight off germs and to digest our food, and all the functions in our body don't work generally when we're in that stress state. And I've done a whole episode on stress, so you can go back and listen to more of that in detail. But I know I can see it, and I see this a lot in the people I work with. A lot of us are going into midlife in this very, very high state of stress because we are doing everything, and self-care, and I know it's boring for me to say this because we all kind of know it, but it's so true, is right at the bottom of the list. We don't make time for it. We don't prioritize it. And as we also know, midlife is a super busy time for so many of us. If you have children, you'll know and understand that, because whether they're smaller or teenagers, that's very, very demanding. At the same time as trying to hold down a job, and potentially you've got a very stressful job as well. Seeing your parents, they might be getting older, there might be issues happening there. And also you want to have fun and you want to have a social life. There's an awful, awful lot. And then at the same time, you throw in to the fact that this whole thing that your hormones start to change. You might be nutritionally depleted, because many of us are nutritionally depleted as well. And that is when we start to experience some of these very, very many perimenopause symptoms. And I remember at this time feeling like nobody else understood what I was going through, particularly Giles. I thought he had no idea. I felt like he wasn't interested. I just remember feeling so lonely. And I remember trying to talk to him about how I was feeling. And again, maybe I just didn't approach him in a way that was very conducive to him actually wanting to be compassionate or sympathetic, or for me to telling him how it was. I probably went to him in a very defensive way. So he didn't ever really make me feel like I was being listened to. So what I ended up doing was writing him an email, as that at the time seemed the only way I could get it over to him how I was feeling. And I found this email the other day when I was thinking about doing this whole subject as a podcast episode. And I'm going to share a little bit of this, bits of this email with you, because I think it really illustrates so well where I was at in terms of how I felt about myself. And I think this is a big part of it. One of the big reasons why I felt so awful at this stage was because I just didn't have a good relationship with myself. So as well as my nervous system being on high alert, I didn't particularly like myself. I didn't really know who I was. That I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the episode. Now, as I read through this email when I refound it, it was written in 2018. I honestly couldn't believe how bloody obvious it was that I was in the depths of perimenopause, although I had absolutely no idea. And you'll see when I read it through how obvious it is. I name about 5 of the symptoms in the email, and I read this to Giles when I found it. And we both were sniggering about it. We were actually both finding it quite amusing as I was reading through it, thankfully, because now I don't feel any of those things, and I feel great at this time in my life. But I couldn't believe how sorry for myself I felt. I was such in that victim mentality. Thankfully, I'm in a place now that I can see that. But my goodness, at the time, I was not in a good place. So as I said, Giles didn't want to come on the podcast, and as he didn't, he did agree that I could read bits of this email to it. And it does illustrate so well how perimenopause was affecting my mental health, how bad also my relationship was with myself, and also how it was affecting my relationship with Giles. And I'm not going to lie, this feels like a really vulnerable share for me, which it does make me feel uncomfortable. But I'm going to share it anyway, because I'm hoping by sharing it that for anyone else, any of you who may be feeling anything similar at all to how I felt, perhaps it might help you to realize that you're not going mad, that you are certainly not alone in how you're feeling. And also, I hope it shows you that you can come back from it, just as I have. So, okay, here we go. So this is from back in 2018. This isn't the whole email, I've just kind of extracted bits from it. For the last year, I don't think I've truly been very happy. Day to day, I try my hardest, but recently I don't seem to be coping and not really enjoying anything. The last year, I have tried to discuss with you how I'm feeling. My tears during our dinner the other night should have been a warning sign that I'm not coping and not feeling myself. I also tried to talk to you when you got back from America about my low moods. My constant irritability at everyone should also have been another sign that I'm not happy and not enjoying life. This time, I think the trigger to my horrible black mood was on Sunday when you absolutely did not support me when Alfie stomped off. This threw up a lot of dark thoughts. The highlights of those thoughts are that I'm a shit mother, you're all much happier when I don't interfere or are not around, and no one would really notice anyway if I wasn't around. I seriously wanted to go away and not ever come back again on Sunday. Then the reality hit. Where would I go? Who are my friends? The truth is, I don't have any. You are my only friend, and recently I can't even talk to you, and you don't even like me most of the time at the moment because I'm so bloody grumpy. I have no one to share my low moods with as no one wants to listen. I find myself on my own at home a lot of the time and I'm lonely. I know I need to sort this out and get back to my old self, so I went to see the doctor to discuss why I keep feeling so low and irritable and generally crap. It was only when she asked me who I could talk to that I realised how incredibly lonely and alone I feel. Apart from you, I haven't anyone who I can share boring things about myself, and you don't want to hear it. Anyway, after asking me a series of questions, she came to the conclusion that I have symptoms of depression and anxiety. I really don't feel you've got my back at the moment. I know I've been a nightmare to live with, and I'm sorry. Just writing all of this down is making me feel better. I have been aware for some time that I need to spend more time living in the moment and to stop worrying about everything else. This is definitely something I'm going to work on. Sorry to ruin your day with this. Oh, so that was some of the highlights of that letter. And when reading this, I have to admit, it really does it's really stirred up some emotions in me. So it's made me feel a little bit, it's made me feel a little bit kind of tearful, but also it makes me so angry. It's so obvious that I was in the midst of perimenopause, the low mood, the tears, the irritability, the feeling alone, feeling lonely, feeling invisible. I mean, all of it. And I even went to see a female doctor and she didn't recognize it either. And I know that this, very sadly, is not uncommon. I mean, it also is very apparent in how much I was feeling like the victim. I was being the victim. And when you're in that place, it's very, very hard to get out of it. However, I do think that email was the first part of my awareness that something wasn't right. And I know that writing that email helped me so much to recognize this. I mean, I even said at the end, I really need to start trying to be more present. So I think that was a real turning point for me. So, okay, enough of the doom and gloom. Remember, this is the Positive Perimenopause podcast. What I want to do now is I want to offer you some positive steps forward in case you can relate to feeling like this. I'm going to share with you some of the things which have worked for me and which have worked for people I work with, and which I know can also work for you to help you get out of feeling like you are alone, like your relationships are suffering. Because ultimately, and this is the harsh part, it starts with you. I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, it's Giles, he's annoying, he's not listening to me, doesn't. But actually, I now can see it starts with me. And as I said before, I think often when I try to talk to him, I wasn't coming at it from the right place. So I have 5, I don't know if they're solutions, but 5 things which I did and which worked for me, which may well help you. So the very first thing I would suggest, and which I did, and I think this email was the first step in that, was talk to people, talk to your partner, talk to friends, talk to people who understand. In that email, I said I didn't have any friends. I did have friends. I just didn't talk to them about it. I didn't open up about it. The moment we can talk about it, and I think these days, because the subject of perimenopause and menopause is so much more out there, well, particularly in the UK, I know that's not the case all over the world, but because we're talking about it more, it's easy, and I think there's just a more better general awareness. But if you're not feeling right, talk to someone. But when you do talk to them, try to just tell them how you're feeling without kind of being really defensive, because I think that was my problem. I was always very defensive and a bit scratchy and snappy. So if it helps you, do what I did. Write down how you are feeling. Write a letter, write an email, and give it to the person so that they can then really understand the depth of what you are feeling and what you are thinking. So that would be my first piece of advice. Then when you feel ready to, find your people. So that might be your friends. You might have a really fantastic supportive network of friends. Brilliant. If you do, then really tap into that. If you don't feel you have, or if you don't want to necessarily share with your friends, there are so many groups nowadays which are very safe places of people experiencing the same as you are, which you can join. So there are Facebook groups. I have my own Facebook group, the Positive Perimenopause Club. I'd love you to come and join. You are so, so welcome. But there are so many others. So it's about finding the person or the people who resonate with you. There's going to be someone out there for you. There are also programs now which you can join. There are apps you can join to find your people who are going to support you. I'm very excited to be launching my group program, Simply Peri, in September, where there is going to be a weekly live group call each week. You can ask me anything. We're going to really dive deep into all the things that you can do, and there's going to be recorded videos, blah, blah, blah. But there's also going to be this incredible supportive community. I know that because already I've got my founding members. I've got 11 of them, and I can tell they're just supporting each other already. So that is my first solution. My second thing which I have spent so much time doing, and I am still doing to this day, is to resource yourself. So this is all about that self-care. It's also all about putting boundaries in place. So how are you showing up day to day? Are you waking up in the morning feeling depleted? Are you waking up with no energy? Are you totally empty of energy to be able to give to anybody else? You've heard it before. I know we have to fill our cups up before we can help anybody else, but what actually I would invite you to do is we need to fill our cups up to overflowing so that we keep our cups full. It's the overflow which we can then give to others. And the only way that we can resource ourselves in this way is by putting boundaries in place so that we say no to people. And if you're a people pleaser, like I have always been, this is a time to actually recognize that, okay, we've got to actually stop doing everything for others because it's not helpful to anybody. And we have got to start focusing on ourselves. When you're operating from empty, that is when we lose our shit over the smallest thing. That is when literally, for me, as I always bang on about, one bathroom towel on the floor could be that last straw where I suddenly lose the plot and shout at everyone. And then the kids are like, oh my God, Mum, it was only a towel on the floor. And then that's damaging my relationship with them. So it's about keeping yourself fully resourced. You will be so much more resilient to the challenges of everyday life because there is always going to be challenges every single day. Some days more challenging than others. So it's about finding those practices which fill you up. So that might be through meditation, mindfulness. Those two were massive for me. More on that actually in a bit. But it's also about finding time for yourself. And I know if you've got a busy job, you've got children, etc., it can be very, very hard to find that time. If that's the case, set your alarm clock 5-10 minutes earlier in the morning and devote and donate that time to yourself. It is possible. I was a busy mum doing all those things and I found it. For me, it was about getting up earlier in the morning. It's also about asking for help, talking to your partner if you have one, if you don't have a partner, speaking to family members or friends to look after the children for a moment, or finding a group or doing something online, or it's about making it a priority. We're also good at putting all this stuff right to the bottom so it doesn't happen. I invite you to put this stuff at the very, very top of your list. So it's about communicating to others what you are doing and why. And if the only time you can do it is when you've got your kids in the house, explain to them, why are you doing this? You could say, that I get a little bit grumpy with you. I need to be able to do some practices and some of these things for myself to help me not get grumpy with you. So I know you know this, but I'm just going to reiterate it again and again. Okay, so my third thing, which I've done, and again, I'm still very much doing every single day, is nurturing and nourishing the relationship I have with myself. So this is perhaps a time to really ask yourself, what is your relationship like with yourself? Have you ever even thought about that? Do you value yourself? Or are you that people pleaser? Are you always doing everything for everybody else and you find it very, very, very hard to say no? Do you find it very difficult to receive help? And if you do, then this is a sign that you don't value your own time. You're not valuing yourself. It's a time to really focus on your self-worth. And this is something which so many of us struggle with. And it all really roots back and from our childhoods. There would have been a time or occasion or many times where we just didn't feel valued, and we carry those beliefs on into our adult life. But actually, this is a time to actually start challenging those beliefs, looking at them, finding out where they stemmed from. So I have been now focusing on my relationship with myself for quite some time. I've been on a right old journey with this. And once you start opening up this this can of worms of personal growth. You can't stop. It is an ongoing process. As you know, I've mentioned before, absolutely love Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he really delves into this whole notion of how your thoughts and what you've always thought really determines how you'll act. And if you're constantly thinking the same thought every day, which most of us do, then what we tend to do every day is exactly the same. And that's when we start to live unconsciously. We are the program of ourselves, and it's just running on and on without us realizing. However, if we want things to change, for example, we want to stop putting others first always. And I'm not saying, not to put others first, because we're going to, but it's about actually being able to put yourself first as well. We've got to start focusing more on ourselves. We have got to start doing things differently. And the first step to doing this is waking up. It's about becoming conscious of your thoughts, becoming aware. Awareness means that you are starting to become aware of the program which is running from you. And this is known as metacognition. This is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about a lot. And the more awareness you have of your thoughts and your feelings, the more you're able to start to choose different thoughts. You're able to start to choose different feelings. And it's the only way to true change. And I honestly believe that, when I woke up to all of this and I started to realize the negative thoughts that were in constant circulation in my head, that is when I realized that I'd just been playing the victim for quite a few years, and I had enough of it. I was ready to change it. And I do think you have to get to a place where you are ready to change it. So if you are fed up of constantly feeling irritable and annoyed and your relationships are being strained because of it, then really look at yourself and just think, is it because I am running that same program, those same thoughts through my head day in, day out? And have you had enough of it? It was when I realized that I could choose something different, that I could then start changing how I felt. And that is really what started this whole path of personal growth. It's like that domino effect. I didn't just start to change my thoughts and becoming aware of my thoughts. I started to eat better. I started to focus on my relationships more. I started to have a much more consistent routine of nurturing myself, kind of going, not only exercise, but doing things which I really wanted to do, carving out time and I would just say to Giles, I'm going to go and do this for an hour. Whereas before I would always feel so guilty about doing anything for myself. But actually, when you realize that it's so important and you want to change, you've just got to do it. And it's much easier to do so. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, the next thing, the fourth thing, which I would really invite you to do, and which I have also done, is about really focusing on this flexible nervous system. So some people might call it nervous system regulation. I like to think it more as nurturing a flexible nervous system. And this is part of the self-care and of resourcing yourself. It's all of it kind of mingles together. If your nervous system is in this constant state of high alert, it's in a constant stress state, in that constant fight and flight mode, not only will you be making yourself ill, you will also be exacerbating your perimenopause system, and you will constantly be on that short fuse. You will be irritable a lot of the time. You're going to lose your rag at the smallest things, and you're going to feel totally overwhelmed all of the time. So you actually end up getting less stuff done because you don't know where to start. You're constantly overwhelmed. So it's about finding the tools that work for you to allow your nervous system to become more flexible. Okay, so we're not aiming for you to be in a constant relaxed state. That's just not realistic, and that's not how we work. What we want is for you to be able to turn off that stress response and be able to go into that more relaxed state. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, we've talked about this really already, but it's about becoming aware. It's about waking up. It's about becoming conscious. And the way you do that is by practicing awareness. So things like mindfulness, being aware of your thoughts. Meditation, I bang on about meditation, is so helpful because in those moments of meditation, you are living in that present moment state. I know you're going to have thoughts, but it's about noticing those thoughts just pass you by. When you're in the present, you're not worrying about the past, you're letting that go, and you're not worrying about the future. You are in that present moment, and it really is so helpful for your nervous system because it's almost like a reset. Breath work. Oh my goodness, that is amazing for your nervous system because I find when I do breath work, I'm not thinking about anything. I am in that moment. And at the end, well, the breath work, which I'm doing, and when you might do a breath hold, or you're in the moment. You are so there. You can feel it. Your heart can really start to kind of feel so full, and it's like another reset. So these tools are so helpful. And when I work with clients, we always find the tools which work for them best. And I always do encourage them to look at tools like mindfulness meditation and now breath work, because it is so blimmin' amazing. And then my final one, which I'm going to share with you, which I think is the bedrock to a good relationship, however difficult times are. And that is all about scheduling in time for fun with the people that you love. So with your partner, with kids, with friends. When I got into a really bad habit of not contacting my friends, it did really affect me. And I think Giles and I, because we weren't getting on particularly well, maybe went through a stage as well where we weren't having as much fun. And one thing him and I have always been so good at throughout having babies, all of that, is about scheduling in time for fun, because actually that is when you can really relate with someone. When you're doing something that you love together, you can share those moments. And I do hear this from quite a lot of people because, again, super busy. You're either super busy, or if you're not doing something which is keeping you busy, you're absolutely exhausted and you've got no energy. But I would encourage you to actually, if that's you, schedule in fun time. That might just be going out for a drink with your partner, or going out for dinner, or you could just be staying at home. Giles and I are brilliant at staying at home, but putting on some music, maybe dancing around the kitchen, it's having a catch up, or seeing friends or getting friends over. It is so important. I really do believe it, and you don't feel so lonely. One thing I wished I had done when I was feeling so alone was to actually just get out of my own way and actually go first and get in touch with friends, because they weren't aware of how I was feeling. So if I had actually just sort of contacted somebody and said, "Oh, can we meet up or do this?" they probably would have said yes. But at the time, I just felt like nobody was interested in me. Honestly, it's so ridiculous when I think about it now, but that is how I felt. So it does perhaps sometimes require a little bit of courage. Just make a day. Just say, "Look, I'm feeling a bit alone or a bit lonely at the moment. I'd really love to see you. I'd love to have a catch up. What's the worst that can happen?" And again, if your relationship with your partner is suffering, or even with your kids, Or if it's with another family member, schedule in some time to do something which you know you're both going to enjoy, because when it's something you both enjoy, then it really is enjoyable. Don't just initially go for something which they are going to enjoy and you're going to still find a bit of a chore, particularly if you're doing something with their kids. Make sure it's something you're going to enjoy as well, because then you're going to get so much more out of it. I hope that this has been helpful in some way. I hope that if you are feeling like I did, that you can find some solace in the fact that you're not alone. And I hope that if you are feeling like I did, that this will encourage you to seek some support, to get help, because you really, really don't need to suffer alone, and help is out there. And hopefully you might find some of those 5 solutions I gave you helpful. So just to quickly recap, the first one was talk about it, find people who understand, write down how you're feeling if you're finding it hard to communicate it verbally. Number 2, resource yourself. Think about what self-care practices you have in place. Are they a priority? Are your boundaries strong enough to ensure that they are actually happening? Number 3, what's your relationship with yourself? How do you value yourself? Really start to think about the thoughts that are constantly going through your mind. Number 4, think about your nervous system flexibility. What tools do you have in place? Is it time to start introducing some mindfulness, some meditation into your practice? These will all help as part of that sort of self-care and resourcing yourself process. And number 5, schedule in some time for fun. We need all of us to have fun, and that's going to help our relationships thrive so much more. If you've enjoyed this episode, or any other episode for that matter, then why not come over and subscribe on the platform that you are listening to this, and or like this podcast. It really does help. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I love reading your reviews, or just send me a message. I love hearing your messages. It always makes my day. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it so much, and I can't wait to speak to you next time. Take loads of care. Lots of love. Bye.